All right, we're back to Basketball 101. Again, an esteemed panel here, but I'm going to ask some of you guys to step off because it's time for the only true point guard that we have.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to talk to Isaiah Thomas. No, the Shaq. I know you always wanted to play point. But we're going to talk to Isaiah. And Isaiah, you know, obviously the point guard position. There's this cliche that the extension of the coaching staff begins with the point guard. When is it, as a player, that you established that ideal and grasped onto the fact that you had to be an extension of the staff?
I understood it very early, you know, from playing grade school to high school. I was fortunate enough to play the point guard position my whole entire life. So my job was to always take it off the blackboard and make it come to life on the court. That's the way it was explained to me. You got to understand every position out on the floor, whatever the defensive scheme is, whatever the offensive scheme is, your job is to make sure that it's implemented out on the floor.
Who is it today that you watch, that you appreciate, that handles those responsibilities?
I think in our game today, no one does it better than LeBron James. Even though he's not necessarily the point guard per se, he dictates what happens out on the floor offensively and also defensively. Then you move down to maybe a Steph Curry. They won the championship. What he was able to do was flawless. And then you have to go to Tony Parker in San Antonio. I think he, Chris Paul, those guys understand what's on the blackboard and how to make it come to life out on the floor. And they do it, and they control the tempo of the game. They dictate the offense and also the defense.
I think that's fascinating to bring up LeBron James. I think we all recognize that he does do that from time to time. Go through the high pick and roll and what it is that you thought about as a point guard setting it up.
Well, the first thing you want to think about in high screen and roll is that you want to keep the ball in the center of the floor. And defensively, the first thing they tell you is to knock the ball out of the middle of the floor. So as a point guard, you want to try to get the ball into the center of the floor. Why do you want it in the center of the floor? So you can see all angles on the floor. You can see the right side, you can see the left side. So if you had a screener like Shaq, we have Shaq coming out, big fella. So Reggie's guarding me.
I'm guarding Shaq.
Good luck, Smitty.
So the first thing I want to do is make sure that this defender don't know where the screen's coming from. So late clock situation, what you always have, point guard to get it, he'll run out, he'll stop right here, and now this defender is always looking for the screen. Looking for the screen, trying to see which side the screen's coming from. His defensive player is not speaking to him, then Shaq and I have him at a big disadvantage. So Steve doesn't call the screen. Let's say Steve called it left or right. What you calling, Steve?
Right.
Okay, Shaq sends me left now. So I come off, and now I want to make sure that I occupy Steve. If I can occupy Steve, that means I've drawn two. Once I've drawn two, now Shaq, I put the ball behind the two defenders. Shaq has an open layup, dish out to a three-point shooter or what have you. But
much of your attention, Zeke, is on your primary defender at that point. I know that you're manipulating Reggie in the high screen and roll, but how much are you looking through him to the screener and then beyond Shaq to the level where you've got guys spotted up and shooting? How much is that defender, Reggie in this case, how much does he worry you?
He doesn't worry me at all. My obligation right now is to occupy weak side defense. So what I'm looking at is the four other defenders out on the floor. So as Shaq comes up,
Big right, Reg.
the defender who's guarding me doesn't matter. So now I'm looking at, okay, when I come off, Shaq sets a great screen, and now I'm trying to occupy weak side defense. Because if I can take away weak side defense, so you'll be the weak side defender, Bo.
Sure, I'll be here.
Okay, and you coming up to take Shaq.
Yeah, no thank
right?
you. Yeah.
So my job is to read you now. These two don't matter. Weak side defense picks up Shaq. Now I know I got to skip over. Okay, if you don't take Shaq, then Shaq's got a layup down the lane. Now, that defender can't help off Grant because we got a shooter there. So we call this strong side. So right now, I've occupied 3 defenders. That's what the point guard's supposed to do in pick and roll.
What?
Can you talk about the play that made you and Bill Laimbeer so tough to guard? Because he's the opposite of Shaq. He picked and popped, and we see more of that in the NBA today.
Good point, 3D.
So if you have a shooter,
There we go. He's ready now.
if you have a shooter, what we say to the shooter is now we call this pick and pop, right? So Shaq's not gonna roll. When Shaq pops, he's gonna pop, spread the floor, space out to make this defender have a long recovery. My job, again, is to occupy 2. So let's run it again, Shaq, and you're gonna pop out and knock down a 3. So I come off, my job is to get Reggie behind me. Once I feel this defender behind me and I'm squared up looking at Steve Smith right in the face, okay? Now I know Shaq's open. And I gotta make sure that this defender, this big defender, I gotta leave Reggie behind me. So I gotta come off quick enough and take up the space. You see, I took up the space, put Reggie behind me. Now I'm looking dead on at you. I got Reggie behind me, so I know Shaq is open. If you leave, then I got layup.
Zeke, one question. How important are your eyes as a point guard to be able to throw me off?
You have to engage the defender with your eyes. So, you know, the most important things that we use in basketball and that we used to use a lot in basketball was voice and eyes. And we would either talk you out of your game or try to engage you. And if I can engage you, make you look at me, then you're not concentrating on everybody else. So we used voice a lot, and then the media started calling voice trash talking. And then you stop talking and you stop using your voice. But good teams, when you watch and you hear them play, they're always talking. Bad teams play in silence. Good teams, they're always talking. They always got chatter.
Isaiah, whether you realize it or not, you are part of the media now. So, all right, one more. Let's run pick and pop for Shaq, and then we'll come back after this commercial break and talk
knock
about
it down, big fella. Knock it down.
All right,
Here we go. Leave him open. Leave him open.
We'll be back to talk about some of the most versatile players that you've ever seen. Steve Smith and Grant Hill will break down what it's like to play several positions in the NBA.
If he stops me, one of you are open. If he goes back, then, you know, if he goes a little further back, I may.
The young Grant Hill. The young Grant Hill. The young Grant Hill.